What's up everybody, how's it going? It's Burke, aka Dansgwait here, and welcome back to part 8 of the Final Fantasy VII Attack Only Challenge, as we draw ever closer to the final showdown against Sephiroth. First off, as always, thank you all for the massive support you have given this series so far. It's been an absolute pleasure to be working on this one and uploading it for you guys. Please continue to show some of that love for the final episode or two here as we wrap this one up and hopefully not too soon after begin a new adventure on the channel. So, without much further ado, let's get into it and talk more about the Final Fantasy VII Attack Only Challenge. So, we find ourselves back in Midgar City as we head back towards the Shinra building and the boss battle against Hojo. In the last session we defeated the Proud Blood, which was a little bit disappointing, I have to admit, after all of the craziness that happened against Diamond Weapon. But basically at this stage it's a little bit more of kind of normal service being resumed. We have the ultimate weapons in play now for Yuffie and for Cloud, and as a result you're seeing at the moment that the damage numbers are just off the charts because we are able to basically ignore defense and do really significant bits of damage. So at the moment it's pretty much looking like we have quite a clear run through to the finish. So let's just see how these encounters are going in Midgar. Thankfully, as we get near the end, we're starting to get more unique, like bigger, beefier enemies starting to appear, which is nice. And well, at least it's not dying in one hit as well. So 3,700 from Yuffie, 4,500, and then 4,700 there, because we've got counter-attack and stuff as well. Just the sheer damage output has been totally insane. Like, this enemy normally has a lot of HP for a random encounter, but you're seeing like the damage is just absolutely relentless from Cloud. We've had a lot of time to boost up our materia as well. We've been in a lot of fights, we've done a lot of stuff here. And so certain materials, like for example counter, they're starting to work very well. And well, not too long after that, we finally get Barrett's ultimate weapon as well, which is just the cherry on top, because now we finally have 3 party members that all have their ultimate weapons and can do the maximum amount of damage. Obvious downside here is that we have less materia growth opportunity, obviously, on the weapons as a result of them being the ultimate type. But we still have a decent number of slots in our armors, and if need be, we can always temporarily swap down to weaker weapons that can probably still get the job done. But for now, obviously, I'm sticking with my ultimate weapons as we move forward. And so after picking up this final ultimate weapon for the front 3, it is time to face off against Hojo and his multiple forms. Let's see if he's going to spring any surprises on us. Right, here we go. The theme kicks in, and we face off against Hojo. Now, this first form of his has 13,000 HP, and you've seen the kind of numbers that we're doing, so I'm not particularly worried about Form 1 especially. Now, what this battle does offer is potentially status ailment problems, and so we'll see how that affects us, but as you've seen, we've picked up ribbons, and we also have the Hades Plus added effects materia as well. So in terms of statuses, I don't think we're going to be in too much danger here, but let's see how things go. Sometimes you do get certain things that can maybe bypass protections or just some aspect of it that I've not considered up until this point. But for now, let's see how we do with the second form, because the first form was a breeze. Form 2 is beefier with 26,000 HP, and it has a myriad of status effects, so let's see if any of them are going to be able to hit and cause us any issues. Obviously I'm trying to like attack the arms and stuff individually if I can, but honestly I don't think it matters too much. You can just spam here. I mean, that 9,000 from Yuffie was absolutely huge. So Sleep Ball comes in and, as expected, doesn't really do very much. So it doesn't like have any ability to bypass protections like Ribbon, for example. So right now this is just looking like an absolute bulldoze. It's not going to last very long here. There we go, arms are gone. Pretty elaborate little death scene there, but eventually we move on to the third form, which has 30,000 HP. Again, when you put it all together, it's like, what, 59,000 HP? Which is a pretty decent chunk, but it's just not going to be enough. I think provided you have status protection, you're just not going to have too many problems here. And Cloud is just absolutely relentless. I mean, even with the criticals as well, just brutal. Look at that cover protection as well. Just beastly. Look at that. He's just not having it. So this team is absolutely too much for Hojo. He didn't stand a chance. And so with that, we already conclude the events in Midgar. So there really wasn't much to do here. I mean, the Proud Clod got absolutely spanked, and so did Hojo. But thankfully we picked up some useful stuff like Barrett's missing score. And so already we can finish things up here and head towards the North Crater to hopefully complete this challenge. Obviously, once you head into the North Crater, you're not going to get the opportunity to kind of buy anything. So I had a final quick look around to see if there was anything I wanted to buy or stock up on. So as you can see, Phoenix Downs, for example, obviously might need those to revive characters if something happens. And so after a few minutes of just doing some of this stuff, I already moved on to the North Crater. Now, this area is deep and there's a lot going on there, so we'll work through it and I'll show you guys what I consider to be relevant as always. In terms of the party setup, I decided to just stick with the ones that I have, mostly because obviously I want to prioritize the characters that have their ultimate weapons and the long range ability. So once again, it's Cloud, Barrett, and Yuffie. In terms of my general setup here, there's basically two things I did. The first was to make sure I was protected against the death status effect, because that was going to be one of the main things that I was going to run into, and Ribbon wasn't going to cover it. And so what I did for Barrett and for Yuffie was that I swapped their accessories to safety bits to protect against instant death. And for Cloud, I gave him the Hades plus added effect materia, and I gave him a reflect ring instead, just in case. And so that's the general setup that I went with. The rest of it is obviously just mostly pink materials to give myself more HP, luck plus, cover, counter, and all of that kind of stuff. So let's begin checking out some random encounters to see how we did in the final area of the game. Okay, here we go. First enemy. Now, these guys, the gargoyles, as I reminded myself using the select button there, you can't do any damage to them. But after a certain amount of hits, I assume, they break out of this kind of stone-like petrified status, but then you could run into problems. So here we go, it breaks out. And then we do 5,500 damage, but it hits back with a level 4 death. So Cloud was at a level 60, I believe, here. And so if I didn't have any death protection, then I would have died. So let me have another look at the levels here, just to double check. Yeah, so Cloud would have died in that scenario. And well, depending on your luck, obviously everybody could be a multiple of 4. And so if you're not protected, you could be in for a rude awakening from the very first encounter in this area. So thankfully, that was relatively okay. Let's see what else we got. Obviously, even if they appear as doubles, for example, like they do here, it's not going to matter too much. Obviously, they can spam as much death as they like. I have the protections in place. So we'll skip ahead here and have a look at some more stuff. We've got these guys here that are a bit more of a generic type of enemy here. Not too much of a problem. You can see, I mean, Barrett's definitely doing a lot less damage than Cloud here. And well, even Yuffie. But still, compared to not having an ultimate weapon, I have to assume he's doing better here. And well, collectively, the three of them are doing very well. And not too long after that, we actually encountered something a bit more beefy, the Dark Dragon. So let's have a look. 5,500 damage, 0 damage because of the elemental that I had on Barrett's weapon, which I later changed after this battle. 410 for the swipe, no big deal. Back row, sadness, being at this type of level, the armors that we have, everything. It's all just too much here, and we completely overpower the Dark Dragon, no problem at all. And so as you can see, in general, the early going in the North Crater was absolutely fine. As expected, the characters are just so powerful now that we are pretty much blasting through everything as long as we have the relevant protection. So in this case, death protection was enough to basically help us steamroll through most of what we've been encountering so far. But then came a time when my inexperience and the fact that it had been a long time since I played this part of the game started to show. So the road splits and I forgot about this whole situation and having to have two separate parties. How does that affect the battle with Sephiroth and all of this kind of stuff? So I kind of winged it here. I didn't kind of take time out to look all of this up and see who's going to do what and what I should do. I just generally try my best to come up with what seemed like a decent plan at the time. So I knew that in total I had 4 characters who could do long range damage natively. And so I figured the basic logic would be to split them up, 2 on one team and 2 on the other team. and that way I could probably have a more even distribution of damage across the two teams. Now obviously what I had to consider, maybe what I didn't consider well enough, was that not everybody has their ultimate weapons, and because I forgot about this whole like splitting team situation and the fact that we'd be basically forced into fighting with party members we hadn't been using very much so far, that's when I was a little bit regretful that I didn't get some more of the ultimate weapons before heading down here. So for example, Tifa, I could have got her ultimate weapon, but I forgot about it and I didn't assume it would be necessary, and so we just came down here without having that kind of preparation. So that should make things a little more interesting, and you'll see what I end up coming up with for the teams before moving on to the next section of the North Crater. So since Cloud is the strongest character, I decided to pair Cloud with Vincent, who's not as strong as Yuffie, and I decided to put Tifa as my non-long range attacker here. So Vincent doesn't have an ultimate weapon, and Tifa doesn't have an ultimate weapon either. Tifa's level is also a level 50, so she's quite far behind Cloud here. So this ended up being kind of far from optimal, and not how I would have done it. And in hindsight, I probably still would have swapped her with Yuffie anyway, I think, given how everything played out. But at this particular time, I was just like, let's just go with what we have. And I gave her the God's Hand weapon, which was one of the better attacking options she had that wasn't the ultimate weapon. And for Vincent, I had the Outsider. That was the best one I could manage for him, because again, I was a little bit underprepared for these guys, but it's all good. So I prepared myself once again, similar setup to before, safety bits to protect me, and as many pink materials as I could muster. And so with that, Cloud, Vincent, and Tifa continued along the path. And yes, I did leave Cait Sith out of this entire equation. Sorry, Cait Sith fans, but it is what it is. And so we have our first encounter with this not ideal party, and we face a behemoth. So let's see how these guys do against a true endgame random encounter. 458 is very reasonable, and he just does a nice 11,400 damage. As you can see, Tifa cannot contribute very much at all, and Vincent is decent, but not like great compared to the likes of Cloud. But also, still, it's not enough. Cloud is such a powerhouse that he's doing basically 90% of the work just by himself. And so it's looking again like still, despite having this kind of underpowered team, Cloud himself is just so OP that we're not really having any issues here. Then we have this one-eyed customer who I thought maybe is a problem to potentially hit, but we've got Vincent in the party to make hits anyway, and Cloud seems to be very accurate too. And 6,800 damage is just way too much for this guy to handle. So this encounter also is absolutely no problem. So once again, for all the world, it's looking like we are going to absolutely destroy everything that we face, and there's absolutely no problems until we land against a Master Tonberry. Now, this guy's mechanics I hadn't looked up, and I don't remember exactly how it worked, so my plan was to just completely blitz him out, rely on my incredible strength, but then I received everyone's grudge, and yeah, 4,530 damage. And in an attack-only challenge, I can either do nothing, or I can attack. Well, I can't skip the turn because that's kind of still taking an action, and so I have to attack with Cloud. And so once he receives the second everyone's grudge, he dies. So suddenly things were looking a lot more interesting. Now, those of you guys, again, that know the game very well will already know what I have to do to get myself out of this situation. And so for the first battle, I didn't do that, and so I was just completely just going for it. I didn't know how much HP it had. I figured surely, like, before it can kill me, I should be able to take it down. But that wasn't the case. Now, thankfully, my saving grace here was the fact that I haven't been using Tifa pretty much at all, and Vincent has had relatively little usage as well, because everyone's grudge is a move that does damage based on how many enemies you've killed throughout the run. And so Cloud, of course, took massive damage, Vincent took relatively low damage, and Tifa takes very low damage. And thanks to that, I was able to survive in the battle for much longer. Because when the Tonberry comes close, it will use its knife attack, and that has death properties. But death is not a status that we're worried about here. It's more so the raw damage that we're receiving from this everyone's grudge counterattack. So let's see if we've got enough in the tank, because I later learned that this guy has 44,444 HP. It's the highest HP random encounter of the game. And so, yeah, this was definitely a battle that worried me a lot, because with Cloud gone, my damage output was heavily reduced, and it was just a race against time to see if I could survive long enough before getting taken out. And so with Vincent also in danger of dying, at this point in real time, I went into the Final Fantasy wiki with my phone and I tried to have a look at this guy's stats while I was playing, just to understand what I was dealing with. And so there I found out what the trick was for dealing with Master Tonberry. Now what you do is you basically make sure that you only attack one time in between Master Tonberry's turn. So a turn being when it basically moves from side to side, or moves towards you, or uses the knife attack. And so now you can see me start to implement that strategy. So it basically gives you the first attack for free. Then if you try to hit it again before it moves, then it uses everyone's grudge. So you can see now I'm just waiting, because remember, in this challenge you can either attack or you can wait and do nothing. And so this buys me the opportunity to get away with attacking Tonberry without receiving the counter. So yeah, it drags on the battle, but it basically makes me completely safe because I have death resistance and I also won't get hit by everyone's grudge. So it went from something that was super dangerous and that could have resulted in a game over to something that's a complete formality, because I had to gain some more knowledge and look up how it worked and find out that you can avoid everyone's grudge by just taking your time and only attacking him once in between the turns. Now that said, I did get a little bit too trigger happy and I made a bit of a mistake and I ended up attacking twice when I shouldn't have, and I got everyone's grudge being used as a result. So Vincent went too quickly here, that was a mistake, and as a result of that mistake everyone's grudge happened and Vincent died. Now at this point I had absolutely no idea how much damage I've done, but because I knew that I wouldn't be harmed as long as I was careful, and well, with Tifa, because she's defeated so few enemies, even if I messed up like a couple of times, it wouldn't have been a big deal. And so I decided to kind of just be patient here and just wait with Tifa, only attack once per turn, and just wait for the inevitable victory against what could have been a potential game over after the first 30 seconds of fighting this guy. And so thankfully, Tifa came through in the end, and she was the last one standing, as we thankfully managed to defeat Master Tonberry. So that was definitely close. But we got the job done, and that whole detail about how everyone's grudge works was my saving grace, and I managed to stay alive as a result of that. So that was basically the most difficult random encounter of this entire area. Until you learn about that mechanic, it's the one that's going to give you the most problems. But thankfully that's one that I managed to find out about during the battle, and it saved my ass from that point forward. In general, we're picking up more materials along the way. I will, as always, show a few snippets here and there of some things I picked up. We also got a lot of sources as well. These are things that basically increase that particular stat by 1 point. And I don't think I'd cashed in most of them at this point, but I just kind of kept them in reserve, and I figured maybe by like the finale or something, I could just cash them all in, and then I can just sort of do what I need to do with it. So yeah, other than that, there was a few more things, but I'll show them as we go along. So then a little bit later, I entered this particular room, which is one that players that know the game well and that have done some kind of like farming, stat maxing, completionist stuff will know very well, because they contain these magic pots. And what I didn't remember was what exactly were their mechanics. Like, I know I do 0 damage, but what about, like, do they leave? Do they attack me? Are we in a stalemate? Are they just going to be stuck there? That I didn't really remember, so let's just see what happens here. Obviously we have no choice but to just keep attacking them here. But thankfully, eventually, all they do is basically they just don't give you the item that you need, and so it's not a dangerous encounter at all. So that was very fortunate, and so the magic pots weren't a problem here either. In some Final Fantasies, man, those magic pots can be deadly if you choose to attack them instead of giving them what they want. But not the case for this one. So it just moonwalks out of the scene, and we get the win. Of course, this is also the place where you encounter those enemies called movers, those little like ball things, and those guys give an absolutely obscene amount of AP. So from what I remember, this is always like the spot to be training up AP, if that's what you need to do. And so in general, it wasn't something I really needed to do, so I didn't deliberately hang around here and try to get lots of extra AP or experience points. But since the team is powerful enough to take out everything here as well, it's something that I could definitely fall back on if I needed to. Like if there was some extra materia mastery that I needed or something, I could come here and fight those movers and get that extra experience as well. So after all of this, I basically started to run the game in ×2 speed, As I mentioned very early on, it's something I tried to not do because I was told it can sometimes mess with the timing of certain things. And so I tried to avoid it, but especially for random encounters in areas that I'm comfortable with, like there's no risk of game overs, it was definitely something that was worth doing to save a little bit of time. And so I did start doing that. But what I basically realized as we did more and more of this was that I didn't need to use the second team because it makes you split the team. But I thought that we kind of had to concurrently use both teams to get down there. But it seems like basically the team with Cloud on it can already basically access everywhere themselves anyway and get everything done. And so I basically took the time and explored around as much of the areas as I could before getting down to the next boss battle area. We also have these guys. I believe they have like a death style attack, but again it's not going to be something that affects us. Let's see this move. 498. I mean, Cloud just counterattacked and completely erased it from the equation, so no problems there. You saw Odin getting a level up. He does have added effect plus Odin to protect himself from death, of course. But in this area there's one more encounter that I want to show you guys before we head down to the next bit. And that is against this guy. So we're in double speed right now, things are moving a bit quick, but at this stage I was pretty convinced I could just bash out everything here without any problems. But the Dragon Zombie is one of the coolest looking enemies in the game, and it does have a pretty cool looking move called Pandora's Box. So let's see that one in action. Super animation. Let's see the damage. It doesn't look like a physical move, and there you go, 1,800 to Tifa and Vincent, but because Cloud has a reflect ring, it's reflected back on itself, and it does 2,500 damage, and it kills itself. Beautiful. And so yeah, Pandora's Box could be a potentially dangerous move. Like 1,800 is more damage than most things have been doing to us, but with the reflect ring as well, that it basically negates that, so there's pretty much no risk of getting a game over from that enemy either. So there we go. I think it took about an hour and 20 minutes or so of gameplay for me to get to this particular point, and we are finally at the bit where we get to choose our party and start heading down towards where Sephiroth awaits us for the final boss battles. So let me get my party together and then we'll start to make moves. This time around I decided to just go back to what I considered my A team, which was Cloud, Barret and Yuffie. And then I figured if there's any other situations where I need to use multiple teams, I'll just think of that when the time comes. Let's just go with the best team for now and see how we go from there. Now this time around, because I knew the random encounters that we'd be facing that use death all the time were over, I went back to equipping them with ribbons this time. And I figured that's still the best kind of all-round situation to avoid a lot of the potential issues. So there you go, there's my couple of ribbons equipped. And for Cloud, I decided to go back to the added effect plus Hades as well. He basically has a ribbon of his own. And so, yeah, that way we could still protect against most of the damaging statuses we could be facing in these final boss battles. And so let's do it. The final rundown towards Sephiroth. So we have these kind of mini-boss enemies to face here with this very cool blue iron giant to start. Let's see. But thanks to those HP plus materials that have been kind of gathering AP for a long time, Cloud hits the quad 9 HP and Barret's not too far behind. And well, even Yuffie, 8,200 is a very healthy number there. And there we go, not too much trouble. I mean, the sword swipe only did like 300 and something damage, so yeah. End game level armors plus that sadness and back row is really like reducing the damage pretty heavily. Okay, so next up, the zombie dragon once again. You've seen the deal with this guy anyway. No problems here. But since these are like kind of the final mini boss encounters ahead of the finale, I will show them. I mean, it's not even able to land hits. Look at that. Like it missed everything twice in a row. And dead. Didn't even get to use Pandora's Box this time. And so after that, we could basically continue jumping down. I thought we were going to get an encounter on every single one of these platforms, but I remembered wrong. But we do get one here. And we face off with another one of these guys, which is not a problem. Body Tail's a new move, I guess. We haven't seen it yet, but still, nothing of significance. Yeah, 2 criticals in a row coming in there. No chance. And so with that, it is time to face off against the absolute final iteration of Jenova, and that's Jenova Synthesis. So let's go and see what this one can do. Does have 60,000 HP for the main body, then it has a section with 10,000 HP and another section with 8,000, so a total of 78,000. The highest so far in a single battle. 5,600, that's massive damage. So it slaps us to counter 563, not a problem. And well, Cloud counters back. I mean, the damage is just adding up so ridiculously fast here. Misses the absorb. But yeah, once the three of these guys get going, it's just like a train, especially when the counters come in too. There's no way Jenova can live with this kind of damage. Absolute obliteration here. And so the countdown begins. It's going to use Ultima if it reaches 0, but there's just absolutely no time for it to do that. And so Ultima Synthesis got absolutely blown away here. Absolutely blown away, like it was a random encounter basically. Nothing. And so yes, it is finally time to face off against Sephiroth and hopefully complete this game with attack only. Well, attack only asterisks, I guess. If you count the diamond weapon solution as still being within the bounds of attack only, then yes, we did it with attack only. If you don't, then yeah, attack only asterisks. As I leave you guys to watch the cutscene that precedes the final barrage of Sephiroth battles, let me share with you the really cool aspect of this finale. Now, it's something that I wasn't really that privy to when I first played the game, and it's something I definitely forgot about when I was doing this particular challenge. And so now that I have the information in front of me, let me share it with you guys for anyone who, like me, either doesn't know or has forgotten about how this final battle against Sephiroth works. So the idea here is that the way the player fights Bizarro Sephiroth changes depending on their actions in the previous battle against Jenova Synthesis, the average party level, and whether or not the player has recruited Yuffie and Vincent. So I'm not going to give you every single option here, but you can fight Sephiroth with either one party, two parties, or three parties. And so basically what I will share here is to qualify for a three-party situation, the player must not qualify for a one or two party situation. Specifically, all of the following conditions must be met. Both Yuffie and Vincent are obtained. Jenova Synthesis achieve 12 turns or fewer before the ultimate counter is activated. The lowest level character in the party is 45 or higher. This does not count Aerith. The average party level is 68 or higher. This does not count Aerith. And so for me, I ended up with the two-party situation, and the reason for that is because of the average level being less than 68. So Cloud is my highest, and he's only at 67, and well, the rest of them, the average is far below 68. So because of that specific reason, I have the two-party version of this battle. And so it follows that the single-party version of Sephiroth is the easiest, the two-party version of Sephiroth is harder, and the three-party version of Sephiroth is the hardest. Also, when you have two parties, the different HP amounts for each party get saved when you switch across the two, so they don't basically take away from the same health pool. So that's also a pretty cool detail. So of course I still decided to go for basically the strongest team that I had as Team 1, and I figured let's just put everybody else into Team 2 and see how we roll, because we still have a long-range attacker in Vincent for Team 2, and we have Sid who has his ultimate weapon, so I hope that that combination of things plus like the raw power of Team 1 would be enough to get the job done. And so for Team 2, I had Vincent and Sid, and you know what, I figured none of these guys, like the remainders, are that important anyway, and just for kicks I decided to put Kate Shit as my third party member for the second team. So yeah, Kate Sith finally gets to have one piece of action in this playthrough, and ends up on the second team here. So let's set this up as well. And one reason I did was because Kate Shit does have the HP Shout, which I figured might be a good weapon in this particular situation. So we have Sid with the Venus Gospel as well, and we have Vincent with the long range capability. So I figured as a second team, it's hopefully still going to be enough to defeat Sephiroth. Let's see. Well, one of the more unique situations about doing this is that I can't just go completely all in on the materia for one side and ignore the other. So I still gave much of the priority to like the main three, but obviously it was a game of trying to give decent accessories and armors to the secondary team and also trying to make sure they had some materials to help them out as well. So, for example, stuff like Ribbon, your first team is going to be very well protected, but your second team is going to be a lot more susceptible to statuses potentially. So it definitely made things a lot more interesting. If this was a single party final battle, I think it definitely would have been less interesting and less fun. But the fact that we had to split and use characters that we don't normally use, and we had to share out the materia and the equipment that we had up until this point, definitely made things just add a little bit more flavor to proceedings for the final boss battles of the story. Now, as you can imagine, there was a lot of time spent in the menu having a look at everything, so I'm just going to generally show a few things in the background as I'm talking here. You'll get the picture, and with that, let's get into the final series of battles for this game. Let's go! For the planet, Bizarro Sephiroth. I always thought this was one of the coolest looking. So, again, for starters here, I'm having a look at this healing. I didn't really have too much of a strategy here. At first I was like, especially with this primary party, they're so powerful that I probably don't have to think too much about this. Let's just go all out and just damage everything as much as we can and see if that gets the job done. So not too much focus at the moment on like individual parts and that kind of thing. But let's see. This theme is so good. But that heal is pretty significant, 6,432. I mean, even compared to a very high damage party like this, that's solid. So the Bolt 3 comes in at 2,400, and that's a pretty hefty amount of damage. So if it's going to do something that's more magic based and that hits the entire party, you could see it doing some pretty significant damage that could trouble us in this battle. Now, this enemy, there is quite a big HP fluctuation depending on your situation. But for me at least, because I haven't used Knights of the Round against Jenova Synthesis, and because I have no characters at 99, thankfully Bizarro Sephiroth only has 60,000 HP. But if you did have an entire party at level 99, and you use Knights of the Round on Jenova Synthesis, it would have a total of 180,000 HP. Especially given those heals, as you're seeing, like the fact that it can heal back like 6,400, pretty impressive. So, Stigma comes in. Let's have a look here. Definitely has some cool looking moves, does Sephiroth. Alas, it does very little. 2 of them it misses, and it does 951 to Cloud. So we can keep the pressure on. At this stage, I start to basically consider hitting different parts of the body, because I felt like I did tons of damage already and not a lot was happening. So I'm deciding to hit that head, and it basically died in one move anyway. And so I decided to start being a little bit more strategic here and not just smacking the central core over and over. Yeah, so the head portion is dead, and it switches us over to the other party. Now, this is what I was curious about, because I was thinking, how are these guys going to hold up? If a part dies, you change to a different party. So now we're going to attack the arm here together. Demi 3 is kind of problematic. 3,500 on Sid. So considering they're the weaker team as well, this is not the best. But you can see, I mean, that's not terrible damage, I would say. Given that Kate shit has not been used at all in this game, I would say that's not too bad. But it's managed to use Demi 3 on 2 different characters, which is not good. Hopefully we can get this arm taken out in time, and we do. Worried about the other members. Let's switch. So I don't know if you can just say not really and just kill all of the parts yourself anyway. That part I never really looked into. Maybe you have a choice of not using the second party anyway. So there I say not really, and then the head portion gets revived, which is interesting. So I was trying to basically see if I could bypass using the second party at all, and it would have kind of made my life a lot easier. So let's see. This Bizarro energy is just, it's healed a lot already. At this stage it's probably healed like 25-30,000 just with that. So not really once again, and now I can continue to up the ante. Take the head out again, and now we only have 2 parts left. So you're seeing I'm basically bypassing using the second team here. I didn't really think this was possible at the time, but Obviously, once the battle starts flowing, you start to realize that you can actually get away with that. Okay, so yeah, this time we didn't get a choice, and we were forced to basically go back to this team. So let's see if we can hold up here, because 2 of my characters are in danger of dying here. And well, maybe a 3rd, depending on what move it does. Here we go. Gonna do something. There you go, Demi 3 again. It's liking that Demi 3. Thankfully it hit Vincent, so Kate Shit ends up being a bit of a tank here. But 0 on that part, so that's not working too well. But I don't know if this is the only thing it can use on this team or something, but for now at least, not doing too well here. But we're just lucky we can attack that head, and you don't need long range materia for that, otherwise we would have been in trouble. Just a lot of waiting around, a lot of dramatic pauses in this fight. Okay, the head portion is dead, so any opportunity to switch over to the other party, obviously I'm going to take. So they can get damage done way more quickly. Yeah, the head portion revived again. Trying to target the right thing here. Okay, here we go. Nice quad 9 damage. Just hate that Bizarro energy move. I hate it, but I also love it. I mean, I do like it when bosses are able to heal themselves effectively. I think more bosses should be able to do that. It always makes the battles more interesting. But the trouble is, basically, we're flipping back, and then we're killing the head quickly, and then when the head dies, sometimes it forces us to switch over to the other team. But now we finally get a clean run at the body again, without the head being alive, and thankfully, we get the job done. So, yeah, it's a little bit more kind of back and forth and interesting, and the second team definitely took some pretty heavy hits, but the primary team is looking good, thankfully. So let's see what's next. Oh, yes. Here it is. The legend. The iconic. The unforgettable. Sephiroth. Let's go. Now, we know this guy's got some big old moves, so let's see if we can take it out before it even uses any of them. Comes in with a nice wall. This is a smart move for it, I would say, given the circumstances. But I don't know if that stops it from taking max damage. It does. So it's halving the damage, I think. Yeah, you can see it, the animation. And I know these guys can do more damage, so at the moment at least it's doing something. Shadow Flare is a big move, but it targets Cloud, who has Reflect, right? Hoping I remember this correctly. Yep, he does. And so, honestly, if it made a different decision from the start, maybe things would have worked a little differently here. But we're continuing to bombard here. And thankfully we're pretty quick as well. Let's see what's next. 2007. Big damage. But yeah, this soundtrack and this song in particular is just so iconic. Okay, so the camera zooms out a little bit and he takes his lofty position. Let's see what's going to happen here. Maybe if you don't have long range, you can't attack him, possibly. But I think for us, it's not going to be a problem anyway. Pale Horse comes in. 1,200. Picking on Barret a lot here. Barret's starting to head into the danger zone now. In terms of Sephiroth's HP, it can fluctuate quite wildly, but if you don't have any level 99s, and you didn't use Knights of the Round, then it's going to be lower. But in comes Supernova. This is the move that I was curious about. Now, I didn't exactly remember what this move does at the time, but in terms of the damage, I always remember it doing a huge amount of damage, but I don't think it has the KO power. So I was pretty sure that I would survive the attack, but I would have such little HP that whatever happens afterwards, I could be potentially in big trouble. So one of the most absolutely ridiculous absolutely bonkers attack animations I've ever seen. It's absolutely crazy, this animation. I remember the first time I saw it, I was just in awe. Just, again, you got to remember, like, PS1 days, you've made it this far, you would be shitting your pants. When you see this move for the first time ever, and you're like, this is some supernova gamma ray burst thing that's traveled through the cosmos, obliterating planets along the way. What is it going to do to us? So yeah, as we continue this ridiculous animation, I'll read a little bit here. Save for Sephiroth's base stats are listed in the tables below as the low value, except for HP, which has a base of 80,000, but they change depending on many variables. For every character at level 99, 30,000 maximum HP, 2 attack, 20 defense, 5 magic attack, and 16 magic defense are added to Save for Sephiroth's stats. So that's a huge boost if there's any level 99s. Knights of the Round on Jenova Synthesis an extra 80,000, and every time Bizarro Sephiroth's head is killed during the previous fight, Save for Sephiroth's maximum HP is reduced by 100, up to a maximum of 24,900. So it can range up to 400,000 HP if you manage to come here at level 99 and have all of the boost, which obviously we don't. So thankfully this version of Save for Sephiroth is much safer. But there we go, absolutely huge damage. I looked this up later, it's 15/16 of your current HP. But then Cloud comes in and we only do 253 damage, because I kind of forgot that for him at least is reliant on his HP. So he was doing very little damage, and Heartless Angel appears and everyone's HP drops to 1. So it's absolutely critical here. Cloud doing 85 damage, not helping here. Can Barret and Yuffie basically get the job done? If it was the 400,000 HP version, I don't think we'd get this done at all. But let's see what's going to happen. It's looking very close. But Yuffie here as the MVP, still doing 5,000 damage due to the nature of her ultimate weapon. Would be funny if Cloud got the win here with his like 80 something damage. So Dispel comes in, let's have a look here. And Yuffie comes in afterwards and does maximum damage because Sephiroth's wall is gone as well. And with that, Yuffie delivers the final blow to kill Save for Sephiroth and to complete the story. There we have it, my friends. Final Fantasy VII Attack Only has been completed. It's kind of cool. The whole party basically having 1 HP left and getting the job done is really awesome. So we did it. It was one of these journeys where once again I had no idea what would happen by the end of it, because again I'd never seen the challenge done before on YouTube, and it's part of the reason I wanted to do it, and I just don't know the game well enough to have said anything with any like certainty in terms of being able to complete it or not. So to finally see Sephiroth defeated was hugely satisfying for me, and I'm really glad I got to get this challenge done and to share it with you guys. And so now that we've made it to the end of the road, it is time for me to start closing off this series and saying my thank yous once again, having made it to the end of a really cool little adventure on the channel. First and foremost, I want to thank 48 Productions once again. Early on, he was so helpful. Setting up that save file with the limit break disabled was basically what made the challenge possible. And his general support and advice and help when it comes to Final Fantasy VII stuff and just life in general over the 2-3 years that I've known him now has been really great. And so he's just a great content creator with a great community, and he really has just endless passion for Final Fantasy VII, the same way I do for Final Fantasy X, and he's always happy to help and just to bring good things into the world. And so a massive thank you to him for his help with this series. And of course, a massive thank you to you guys, because as soon as I step outside of Final Fantasy X, it's always like, how is this going to go? Is it going to be worth the time? Are people still going to be tuning in? And as mighty as Final Fantasy VII is as a game, when it comes to my channel in particular, like any time I step out of the Final Fantasy X lane, it always becomes much more uncertain how things are going to perform. Is it going to be supported enough to make it worth the time? Because these series in particular, per episode, they take so much longer than making a regular LP. Even if they get viewed more than LP episodes, they need to be at a certain level for them to be sustainable for me to spend this much time on them. And so thankfully, due to the support that everyone's given this series from the first episode, we've had another successful one, and it's given me the green light to generally continue with this type of content in the future. So thank you all so much. If you are going to continue to see and enjoy this type of content on the channel, know that you are specifically a reason for that. It's become one of those great things where my interests and my type of content creation and what I like to do has aligned with what the audience wants to see as well. And so we have this beautiful union here where I can make this type of content and you guys can support it enough to make it sustainable and to make it something that I can upload regularly on the channel from now on. So for that, you have my eternal thanks. Of course, I got to mention the Patreon. It has been massive once again. Thank you to everyone that's joined. I really do appreciate it, from the lowest tier down to the highest. I always say it and I will continue to say it. Stuff like Patreon and subscription models like YouTube memberships, Twitch subs, whatever that might be, these benefit content creators so heavily compared to simply watching the content that even at the lowest, most affordable tiers, you are doing your favorite content creators a massive favor by joining their Patreons or their memberships at any kind of tier level. And that collective community of people really helps to form a solid foundation for us to continue to do what we do every day. So thank you all so much once again. But unfortunately, Sepiroth is going to have the last laugh here, because in this final kind of set-piece battle at the end of the game forces you to use your limit break. So we failed. We literally failed. So a very amusing sting in the tail here, because technically, even if you disable the limit bar, which you can't do anyway, you still can't defeat Final Fantasy VII using attack only, because you have to use the limit break here to kill Sephiroth. That's crazy, right? So this is something I'd kind of forgotten about. I thought maybe there's a chance to attack him normally. You don't have to use it. But no, you have to use Omnislash to kill Sephiroth at the end. So yeah, to go right back to the beginning of this series and to answer the question in the title, well, the answer's no, actually. Like, if you want to be like really technical about it, the answer's no. But obviously it's a set-piece battle. It's more of a cutscene. It's impossible to lose. Like, it's one of those things where, yes, okay, basically you can. But if you want to get really technical, due to Diamond Weapon and due to Sephiroth, even if you were to hack away the limit break thing, which we did, it's still not enough. You still can't defeat the game without having to rely on summons for Diamond Weapon and Omnislash against Sephiroth. So I just had to kind of interject this whole thing by just mentioning that this is the case. So yeah, unfortunately that's how it ends, but it's kind of funny for me. It's almost like a meme. Like, after all of this stuff, the game forcing you to use that right at the end is kind of funny to me. But yeah, it is what it is. There's no way around that one, unfortunately. So yeah, Sephiroth really did have the last laugh. So let me continue with the outro, having got that out of the way as you guys watch the finale of the game. So thank you all so much once again. As always, for this type of content in the future, Patreon will be a place where you can get early access. It's also nice for me because if I've made any mistakes with the video, or there's anything that I need to change up, people that are watching it through early access will be able to see that, and they can offer some early feedback before anyone sees it. And so it even makes you a little bit more of a collaborative part of the content creation process. And so of course it financially benefits me, but in terms of content creation too, it's nice to have this small like sample group of people that get to see this content early and catch any issues with it ahead of time as well. So if you've enjoyed yourself and the hours of entertainment provided by series like this one, even at the lowest tier, I would kindly ask that you check the Patreon link. Just have a quick browse through the tiers and the explanations of them and how it all works. And if you decide to join at any level, you of course always have my endless gratitude, and it gives you a much higher chance to continue to see series like this one. So let's come to the important question. What is next? What will happen now when it comes to this type of content on the channel? Now, I recently did a poll, and it's something that I wanted people to vote in because it was quite important. And the poll was generally asking about, do we continue with attack-only challenges? Do we completely scrap the attack-only idea? It's kind of run its race, people don't care anymore, and we just do completely different challenges, or we do a mix of both. And unsurprisingly, a mix of both was the winner, and this means that I will continue to investigate attack-only in other Final Fantasy titles, seeing if it's possible, seeing if it's easy, if it's difficult. Are there any other twists that I can put on the attack-only thing to make it more interesting? And alongside that, I'll obviously be doing some other material as well. So the plan, if I can do it, is to basically have 2 series like this ongoing on the channel, where every Friday or Saturday there will be some kind of challenge material to be watched that I hope you guys will be enjoying. So that's the general plan. Stay tuned on the channel. I'm going to be announcing what it is in the next few weeks, and hopefully everyone that's been watching along with this one will also jump in for that one too, and we'll have a good time with more of this type of challenge material in the future. So that's the general gist. You guys have definitely voted with your time and your views. You like this type of content, and people have been kind enough to say how much like they appreciate the more edited voiceover format. It's a little bit different from just sort of uploading commentary in real time and just sort of dumping that entire playthrough. I feel like it's a nice hybrid between taking an entire run that takes like 30-40 hours and making a 40-minute video out of it versus just dumping the entire run and having like 100 parts. So I'm liking what I'm doing with this. Compared to the type of work I usually do, it's high effort and it takes more time, but I'm glad that it's getting the kind of responses that I want for it, and I'm more than happy to put the time in, provided that people continue to enjoy it and support it the way they have for this particular series. It's finally time for me to wrap things up here and say goodbye. The elephants in the room are Emerald Weapon and Ruby Weapon. Because this final episode is already going to be quite long, for now I'm not going to include them. I haven't even tried them. I assume it might be impossible, but I'm going to take a look, and if I manage to defeat Emerald or Ruby Weapon, I will make another bonus episode and include that one later. So do look out for one final video about Ruby/Emerald Weapon. It may or may not happen, but for now I'm happy to basically complete the story and to wrap up the series here. Thank you all so much for watching. See you soon. Take care.